Hi, this is David Skidmore from Third Coast Percussion, here with another online masterclass on ensemble repertoire. Today we're going to be talking about a piece that I wrote that Third Coast Percussion plays all the time, called Torched and Wrecked. Torched and Wrecked is part of a series of pieces I wrote called Aliens with Extraordinary Abilities, and like a lot of pieces in that set, Torched and Wrecked is performed live along with a pre-recorded electronic track. To do this, we use a click track, which keeps us exactly in sync with the electronic track. And in a future episode, we'll talk more about how we use click tracks in our performances. Torched and Wrecked is a moto perpetuo, which means that it is a constant stream of notes from beginning to end without pause. And this means that the rhythm has to be super tight throughout, and every single note that everyone plays has to land exactly with everyone else. The marimba 1 part, which I play, starts the piece. These first 5 bars of the piece bring up an important point about dynamics that applies to the rest of the piece as well. The first 5 bars of the piece are written forte, and in fact, if you look through the whole piece, the only dynamics that you'll see are forte and fortissimo. But this does not mean that you should play every note robotically and exactly the same decibel level throughout. We talk a ton about this in TCP, but remember that dynamics are not a fixed decibel point or a fixed volume level. So within the dynamic of forte, there's a range of exactly how loud or quiet each note is. And the same is true for fortissimo or mezzo piano or any of the dynamics. And it's these subtle changes in how loud or quiet each note is that really bring a piece of music to life. So for instance, in these first 5 measures of Torched and Wrecked, I play forte throughout, I play strong, but in that 5th measure, I dip down in the dynamic just a little bit, so I've got room to crescendo into bar 6, which is when Rob and Sean join. Throughout the entire piece, there are moments like this where there are subtle differences and subtle variations in exactly how loud or quiet each note is. And I'll mention a couple of those in this video, but know that it's also open to interpretation. So there may be moments that you choose to play a note slightly louder or slightly quieter than another note, and that's great. Up until letter C, vibraphone 1 and both marimba players play pretty strong, and that establishes the kind of mood of the piece, which is exciting and energetic. But at letter C, vibraphone 2 enters, and in this piece, vibraphone 2 is really playing the solo, so it's important that at that point, vibe 1 and the 2 marimba players back off the dynamic a little bit so that vibe 2 can easily be heard. Don't back down too much because you don't want to lose the energy. Just make sure that you're playing at a strong level, but that you can still clearly hear the vibraphone 2 player. The vibraphone 2 part is probably the most challenging part in this piece. You play a ton of different 4-mallet permutations, so the player on this part needs to have a really strong command of their 4-mallet technique. And as I mentioned earlier, throughout all these different permutations, the rhythm really needs to be even, and every note that the vibe 2 player plays needs to be perfectly in sync with the players in the rest of the ensemble. This becomes challenging, for instance, in measures 92 through 95, where the vibe 2 player plays in groupings of 5 16th notes. It's easy to let the time slip here, so be sure to practice a lot with a metronome. Also notice how Peter, who's playing the vibe 2 part, plays just a slight accent at the beginning of each of the 5-note groupings. I really like this a lot because it kind of tricks the listener a little bit and makes them think for the briefest moment that somehow the tempo has shifted, even though we're still in exactly the same grid that we've always been in. The marimba 2 part also has to play a bunch of different 4-mallet permutations and keep the rhythm nice and even. And the marimba 2 part also has the challenge of needing to play really strong and a big, loud, full sound in the lowest register of the marimba. To do this, Rob, who's playing the marimba 2 part, does a couple things. One, he uses latex-wrapped rubber mallets, specifically Vic Firth models 152 in the left hand and 153 in the right hand. Rob also takes 2 black hand towels and folds them really carefully and stuffs them between the upper manual and the lower manual of the instrument on the register that he's playing, and this dries the instrument up and makes the sound much more articulate so that you can really hear the rhythm that he's playing at this quick tempo. In this video you can see that we're performing the piece on 2 vibraphones and 2 marimbas, but we actually often perform this piece with just 1 vibraphone and 1 5-octave marimba. To do this, the 2 marimba players share 1 5-octave marimba, and the players can do this without getting in each other's way. And the vibraphone 1 part, Sean's part, actually only plays 4 pitches throughout the entire piece. The highest octave of B flat, C, D flat, and E flat on the vibraphone. So when we do this piece with only 1 vibraphone, Sean instead plays his part on 4 metal pipes that are tuned to those exact pitches. And he rests the metal pipes on a towel so that the sound is nice and dry. You can watch us perform this version of the piece with just 1 vibraphone and 1 marimba in our NPR Tiny Desk concert. You'll also notice in the NPR video that we're performing the piece without electronics, and I think the piece works just as well with electronics as it does without electronics. We have a number of cues that we do throughout this piece, but to be honest, we also in our click track have verbal cues at each of the rehearsal letters, which ends up being really important for us because we usually play this piece at the end of a long concert, and if someone has a lapse of concentration for just a moment, the rehearsal letter really helps us stay secure and keep things together. But no matter what, we always cue the downbeat of the measure 2 bars before the end of this piece. You can see in the video Rob doing this cue, but I promise you all 4 of us are doing the cue because we always do. This is a piece that you really want to all end together. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.